Marshal Kapoor, DG Caps, distinguished senior officers, panelists, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, it gives me immense pleasure and an honor to have been invited to chair this very important session in today's seminar. As the previous speakers, including the DG and the two deputy chiefs, have brought out the importance of surveillance in today's world, so I think it's really not warranted to talk about the criticality and the requirement of surveillance. I'm sure most of us sitting out here in the audience at some time or other in our lives would have had the challenge of wanting to know everything that we want to know. But ultimately, would have reconciled to plan our work schedule, our operations based on what is available. I really do feel that surveillance today has become the defining feature of our existence, whether it be geopolitics, national security, civil society, the various applications that run on it, and industry innovation. I also do feel that right now we are at an inflection point in the history of national security and military strategy. Today, the threats are no longer defined by linear front lines or theater of operations. Today, the threat can emanate in the salient silence of space, in the vast airspace with a low RCS drone, in the vast maritime domain, or the challenges of the ground. In this era of multi-domain operations, gathering of intelligence in the silos is obsolete. It's not only inefficient, but it's actually a strategic vulnerability. Today, we don't need to answer the question, where is the enemy? Only. What we need to be able to answer is what is the intent and what do we decide on. The challenge today is not only to collect information, but to process the millions of data points to get immediate, actionable, decision-making insights. For India, this transformation is tied to the strategic imperative of Atmanirbhar Bharat. At times, in today's time, and going into the future, we no longer can be satisfied by mere consumers of the technology developed elsewhere. We need to be the architect of next generation ISR, which is designed, developed, and deployed in India. In today's seminar, we are not only going to explore the op imperatives of the surveillance technology, but also how they interact, how can they form a mosaic of modern security and intelligence. We are going to talk about the challenges of terrestrial surveillance, where the challenge is sheer environment and the persistence, from the freezing height of Himalayas to the high temperature density of deserts to the jungles of the east. The requirement of the maritime surveillance. Oceans do not have checkpoints. The subsurface temperatures across thousands of nautical miles requires a kind of surveillance architecture which is totally different what you would want in the terrestrial. The requirement of data fusion, the ability to get a unified command and control network, the ability of the industry to transform the national capabilities into assets that are operationally relevant and commercially viable. And overall, the high ground, the space and aerial integration. To take us through this interesting topic, which is going to be framed not only in the technical terms, but also in a strategic an industrial issue. I'm sure, and I will request the panelists to touch upon the three major themes of integration. How can this different surveillance architecture be integrated to form one common network? The requirement of innovation and regulation. How can we develop a regulatory framework that does not stifle innovation, but also enable us to develop our capability? And the strategic implications of the technologies that are being developed. We have a very eminent panelists of 8 distinguished speakers which have been introduced earlier. So I'll not going to repeat, apart from mentioning that we have a perspective from the operational domain as well as the industry perspective getting into how the requirements can be developed. What is lacking in my opinion is the perspective from the air and the space. So I will set aside myself as the chair of the panel and take 2 minutes without taking too much of time from the panelist time to talk about space as DSA. Space ultimately is the high ground, is the ultimate high ground. It gives us unique characteristics of the ability to observe where technically no man has gone or can go. Space is the global commons. The traditional rules of sovereignty do not apply to space, which gives us a unique advantage. It gives an access to areas which perhaps may not be feasible from other means of ISR collection. The technology today allows us to see what human eyes cannot. The technologies today provide us the ability to give near real-time surveillance. But it also has its own challenges. The space environment is harsh, it's extensively technology dependent, it has got limitations which are not existent on ground. What you deploy something in the space, you cannot go and tweak the hardware or the software, you cannot do any modification. To be able to utilize space, we need to learn and we need to appreciate how we can integrate the insights from space with other modes of intelligence collection. As chair today, I'll go back to my role as chair. I will request the panelists to stick to the time, 15 minutes each. In case I feel that we are exceeding, I will give you a reminder. We will have question and answer sessions towards the end. So I will request the audience, in case you have a question, please keep it to yourself. We will have time for it towards the end. And I'm also taking the role for the chair to make sure that the audience stay awake for the next 2.5 hours. So anyone I see dozing off, be ready for a question from the chair. So with that, I will request Major General Sridhar to take on.